Hello, this is Julius from Basic Financials. Today I'm going to do a video which is getting back to the basic financials bit. We seem to have sort of gone a little bit more into tax planning and detailed tax rules, which is fine, and I'm sure that's very helpful for some people, but I'd like to just get back to a little bit of basic financials. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about inflation today. It's a lot in the news at the moment and has been over the last year, with the government saying that one of their targets is to halve inflation. But I just want to sort of talk a little bit about what's actually going on there. There's a measure that's used to work out inflation now called CPI, Consumer Price Index. It used to be RPI, Retail Price Index, but they changed that figure. I think it was back in 2015. I think they started to use the CPI. The CPI excludes certain things from the basket of goods. You could imagine that with inflation, some things will be going up and some things will be going down in price. For example, imagine house price inflation. If you think what like a house in 1965, say, but you could buy for £2,000, you'd probably now buy it for about £375,000. So that's a huge, massive house price inflation there. On the other hand, an electronic piano, which cost maybe £1,400 in, say, 1986 or 1990, say, between then, you might be able to get that for £1,000 now. So that's come down in price. So different things will be going up and down, and that there's different elements within that inflation. So that inflation is quite a crude figure, really, because there's an awful lot within there. Some things will be going up, some things will be going down. Anyway, that's one thing. Now, the other thing is, we often hear on the news that inflation, say inflation's 10%, and then they say that inflation's come down to 5%, and you'll hear that, oh yes, the government's made their target of halving inflation. And then some people will say that, oh yes, inflation has been halved, it's now only 5%, but it does still mean your prices are going up because inflation's still 5%. Now, that sounds right, but you have to think to yourself, inflation is never going to be a prediction. It's not, you can't really say, if inflation is 5%, you can't really say that prices are going up by 5%. All you can say is they've gone up by 5%. And then the other thing you need to know is, well, how long is that 5% figure over? Now, normally it's an annual inflation rate, so they'll look at the inflation over the last 12 months. So if you're told that inflation's 10%, that means if you look at prices 12 months ago, according to the CPI figures, prices have gone up by 10% in that whole year. Now, if you're told that inflation was 10% and it's now 5%, you can't really say that prices have gone up or going up by 5%, partly because of inflation is only ever a figure, a historic figure, and never a prediction. And what's actually happened there, if it was 10% and now it's 5%, and that change has happened in the last 6 months, then you must be in a deflation period if you look at it month on month. Because if inflation was 10% over the 12 months, and then 6 months later it's 5%, then it must have come down quite a lot in the last 6 months to have made the yearly figure 5%. So if inflation's halved, it means that prices have come down, not gone up, and aren't going up, and you can't say it's going up because it's a historic figure. Now, this is getting into areas where, if you think that the government are still doing things, because maybe inflation's only 7%, so that rather than 10%, so they haven't managed to halve it. And they've made this silly prediction that they're going to halve it. Whether that would be the right thing to do or not. It might be the right thing, I don't know. But they've got it down to 7%, which means prices are coming down, because it was 10%, now it's 7%, so it's been coming down. Now, if they carry on doing the same policies, like increasing interest rates, to keep it coming down, now at some point you're going to get to a position where you're in deflation, and actually the yearly figure will be, say, could be a -%, and then all of a sudden the government's saying, oh my goodness, we're in a deflationary period, and that isn't very good either. That's something to think about there. Now, I just wanted to, you'll often hear that the Bank of England have a target inflation rate of 2%. So when I was saying about the government making policies, the government do make the policies. They don't decide interest rates. So when the Bank of England raise and lower interest rates, that's supposed to be independent of the government. So the fact that government say they're going to kind of reduce inflation by half, there's not a lot they can do about that really, because one of the main tools is interest rates. So unless they actually have got quite a sway over Bank of England, which they're not supposed to, then that shouldn't be the case. But now, what was I going to say? On the interest rates, when you increase interest rates, then obviously there's less money sloshing about for people to spend. And going back to the target inflation of 2%, the reason why they have that target 2% is because if you had prices decreasing, like that deflation, one of the reasons for not being good if you got deflation is that that means prices might overall coming down. So people might not invest, not spend money, because they think that if they wait for a bit, the prices will be less. And that just makes things worse. So the target rate of 2% means that people are going maybe spend, because it might be more expensive later on. So that's all to do with sort of money in the economy and interest rates and inflation, and so I hope that sort of gives a bit of thought about inflation and what it actually is and how it's measured and what the consequences of it are, and when you hear people saying things on the news, it might be a little bit misleading. So yeah, it's quite interesting. I hope you've enjoyed that video. If you've got any comments or questions, just leave them in the box below, and like and subscribe as usual please, and I shall see you for another video sometime soon. Thanks for listening.